Okay, welcome everybody. Tonight we are going to be talking about setting up an indoor grow system. This is part of a two-part series. So the idea of tonight is going to be focused on the equipment and kind of all of the things that you need to have a functional system. Our speaker today is Will Gardner from Rivendell Gardens. He's been doing this for a number of years and he's got a lot of experience. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a screen share for Will's slides. And if we can give Will a warm virtual welcome here. and we'll kick it off with Will. All right.
Yay, Will.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
Okay, Will, just tell me when you change slides, okay?
Okay, so today's workshop class is about setting up an indoor grow system. And like Keto said it before, we're going to be talking about, can y'all hear me correctly before I even?
Yeah, you sound great.
Sweet. So
Yes.
as Keto was talking about before, this is, pretty much the tools, the equipment, kind of seeing how I set mine up and how much success you can have with, a basic system. But I'm going to be going over the main tools and the pros and cons of those tools. So you get the next slide. Here, this is just a glimpse of what I did last year, and starting off with my basement, and just learning and applying what I know. You get the next slide. So this is a little background and history about what I do at this farm. So hello, everyone. My name is William Gardner. I am an urban farmer located on the east side of the city. I am head of the farm at Rivendell Gardens, which I operate with my life partner, Lauren Gray. We started this plot back in 2018, but my garden experience goes way back, like Keto said. I worked with organizations like Keep Growing Detroit, D-Town, other nonprofits, Emerald Isles, a lot of different community groups. And like I gained a lot of experience from a lot of gardeners, and I really value their effort to produce food. So that drives me to kind of just learn more and apply it, and then being able to teach it as well. So like when I started my own transplants, like I didn't start with a lot, but I knew like I was going to have to scale up, so I bought, the right tools. And after that, I applied all that. And pretty much in this class, we're going to go over the tools and discuss the pros and cons. And yeah, so let's get the ball rolling on gathering the right gear and starting your own transplants, y'all. And here, this is a glimpse of the stuff that I grew last year, and how it just started off with a few. And you can see how I gradually just moved up and scaled up. The more equipment I got, the better I was able to maintain and grow a lot of plants. This is another slide here, starting with just basic stuff.
Oops, sorry about that.
You good. A shelf, and then you can see how many plants you can grow in such a small amount of space. But having the right tools, though, is essential. Having the lighting and having the right trays, having the right mixture, the right, soilless mix, and adding the right additives, to kind of maintain the growth and the health of the plants. But yeah, this is just a basic setup, man. I grew hundreds and hundreds of plants, thousands, in a small amount of space. So here is my 2 light setup. So I use a combination of fluorescent lights and HID, high intensity discharge, that's the HPS, and the metal highlight. And we're going to go over that later in the class. But here's my two lights set up. I started off on the table there with the fluorescents, just because they're not real intense. I can put them real close to the plants. And when it got bigger, I moved them to the ground underneath the HID light, the HPS light, high pressure sodium, where they can withstand that with having the light at a more elevated level. So you can see how these are closer, or the fluorescent ones on the table are kind of closer to the table, and then the lights or the plants on the ground, you can see how far, the light is above them. So they can take that without bending and trying to find the light. That high pressure sodium light was enough. It was intense enough to sustain their growth while they're in that stage, the early stage. And I wanted to kind of reiterate this too, like we pretty much getting ahead of the game. Like when you start to transplant to start your seeds early, you're giving the plants, enough time to germinate and grow to the appropriate size before you transplant them outside or take them to a greenhouse. And as a general rule, you want to start your plants 4 to 6 weeks before the date of the last frost. And you can get a lot of information from your seed packs, but this right here is pretty much getting ahead of the game. So if you're trying to do this, you're on the right track to staying ahead of the game and getting your seeds early in the ground. Okay, and this is the lesson overview. So we're pretty much going to be talking about the stuff you need to get started, the lights, the types, going over some of the spectrums of the lights and the pros and cons. We'll also be talking about the soil, what type, the brand, the amendments and additives if need, and then the equipment that you would use. So your fans, your timers, your shelves, your surge protectors, your water sprayers, your heat mats and humidity domes. So we get into the types of lights. So the types of lights, there are other lights available, but the type we're going to be talking about right now are the most used or the most common used in growing are fluorescents, LED lights, MH, metal highlight, and HPS, high pressure sodiums. Okay, we can start off with the fluorescent lights. They can range, the price range can range between $5 and $35. You can go from you can grow with CFL lights, these small complex fluorescent lights that's in the middle right there. Those would be your cheapest ones, but fluorescent lights provide almost all blue light waves. So that's great for starting in the vegetative state in your seedlings. So starting plants early, that the fluorescent light gives off a great spectrum for that. You can grow into the later stages, but you will notice that the spectrum, it won't fruit or grow the plant until its full growth with the fluorescent. So this makes them excellent for growth and foliage for plants. Use them to start seedlings as well. Fluorescents are cool, so making them safe around plants, meaning you can put them real close and it won't burn them. But if you do have them on the leaf, it will burn, but you can have it real close and it won't burn them as all the other lights will. So since they standard fluorescent lights tend to be limited in intensity, you can place them very close to plants, about 2 inches for seedlings and 4 inches for other plants. You can leave the lights on. I'll leave mine on sometimes for a long time, 18 hours, but it says for 14 to 16 hours. The pros in fluorescent lights, they're real cheap and low energy consumption, but the cons is they don't give out a lot of lumens, or they're not going to grow your plant real big, or it's not going to be as full as it will be under other lights. We can go to the next slide. LED lights. These are a little more pricey. You can find some cheaper ones nowadays, but they range between 35 and the real good ones, $450, and probably even more in some cases. But LED is great because you can get to specific light spectrums for the growth stage. So they're very custom. You can get real custom with the LED lights. They're way more efficient. The pros in that they're way more efficient as far as energy usage. They last a lot longer than other typical bulbs, other incandescent bulbs. The cons about these are they're expensive and they don't cover a large amount of areas. So you have to get a lot of them, but they're very good for the light spectrums. And if you want vigorous plants, it costs more, but you know, you definitely benefit from that.
Will, is this a good time to ask a question?
Yeah. Anybody can ask a question.
There was a question about, is your basement really cold? Can that affect the plants? My basement is very cold.
It does. In some cases, that's where we would use heat mats to start them off. Like it only affects them in the early stages. In my case, like if you can start them off like under some heat mats first, the first couple days or whatever, then put them under some humidity domes. I wouldn't have them directly on the ground. In that case, I had them up when I first started them. So that was like after a couple of days, I had that whole table filled. And then after a couple of days, I put those on the ground and started a whole another table. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I would start mine off. And the ones that needed heat, I don't know if it was a heat mat on one of them slides, but I might have had a heat mat for the hot crops that needed that, you know, that little bit of heat to start off real good. I did have a heat mat in one of them spots on the table. So yes, the basement is cold. To answer your question, the basement is cold, but it's ways you can curb that a little bit by keeping them off the ground, off that cold floor, and having them right underneath them lights with humidity domes. That's key to kind of curbing that coldness down there, because yeah, it is cold in the basement. Yeah.
Okay. And then two more questions before we move on. With the LED lights, how close do you recommend having them to the seedlings?
The LED lights, you can have them fairly close. Like the LED lights and the fluorescents, 4 inches, 6 inches.
Okay. So they don't kick off the light like the bigger.
No, it's not intense like the HPS light or the metal highlight. You couldn't, you would notice that in minutes. They're really intense. Those bigger lights, those high intensity discharge lights. So the LEDs and fluorescents are great for starting your seeds. But what's great about the LEDs, you can get spectrum specific. So you can have LEDs for just doing your vegetative growth, and LEDs just for your fruiting and flowering, or you can have it for both. You can have a mixture and try to mimic the sun as best you can. That's what's great with LEDs. You can kind of customize that to have both those spectrums in there.
And then how long do you recommend to keep them on?
The lights?
For LEDs.
14 to 16 hours.
Similar.
Yeah. 18, if you got a timer, that's great. Or if you can hit the lights before you go to sleep, you know what I'm saying? But it's good to have them underneath there, in my experience, at the, under a large amount of hours, just to get that growth and to mimic that almost, summertime, I guess. It's great to have them under there a little longer.
Okay, great. You want to go on? Ready to go to the next slide?
Yeah. So now we're at the metal highlight. So these are more of the high intensity discharge lights. These lights right here, the price range, you can get generic brands, $50 to couple $100, depending on what brand you get. And traditionally, metal highlight lamps have been used by indoor growers during the vegetative stage of their plant growth. They are ideal for growing plants up to the flowering and fruit production stages because the spectrum mimics the spring and early seasonal sun. So it's like you want to use these in vegetative growth if you have bigger plants, and like how I had on the ground, those plants were a little bit bigger than, just starting off maybe a week or so. So having them underneath this light, I didn't have to have it as close, and I didn't have to, I didn't have to have it spread out. I didn't have to have many lights. Like that light was enough, and it was intense enough to cover that area that I was growing in on the ground. So these are very good for vegetative growth. And the cons about this, though, they produce a ton of heat. So this kind of gets back to what she was asking, whoever's asking that question. That curved the heat too, because once I started using the bigger high intensity discharge light, that gave off a lot of heat. So that kept the area a little warmer as well. But yeah, that you want to keep them off the ground at first. If you can, at least put a pallet on the ground or something to kind of be a buffer in between that cold concrete floor. And then with humidity domes or some plastic, you'll be able to contain the heat that it naturally builds up from the soil and being covered like that. So yeah, we can, if anybody has any questions about this light or this spectrum of lights, if not, we can move on to the next slide.
Could you, so when it says $50 to $200, is that like this whole unit on the left here, or is that just for the bulb, or like?
That's a good question. So yes, the unit itself could cost up to $200 or more, or no, they're cheaper now, so they're around $200. The good price range for these lights are about $200. The bulb itself would cost about $50 to $100. So you can get the bulb, the whole setup for a couple $100, or you can buy the bulbs individually for $50 if you already had the unit. So yeah, the unit itself would range to about $200 for this whole unit, and the bulbs will be, depending on your brand that you're trying to get, the cheapest one is probably about $50.
Okay, we got a quick question here. What is the lifespan? Like, how long what's the lifespan of these lights is the question. So I guess if you could talk about the three that you've covered so far in that context.
Yeah, no problem. The fluorescents and the LEDs, they have a real long lifespan. And it kind of depends too on how long you have them on, but they last for a long time, a real long time. I've had fluorescents for years. And had them on for a while. It just depends, I guess. Yeah, the brand maybe, but fluorescents and LEDs do last a while. The high intensity ones, just because, it's a lot of stuff going on with them, they don't last as long, and they produce a lot of energy. So a lot of them do burn out quicker. A lot of these ballasts do burn out too. I've ran through a few of them. So compared to the LEDs and the fluorescents, the high intensity discharge, they don't last as long as the fluorescents and LEDs. Those will last a little bit longer, actually a lot longer than these high intensity discharge lamps.
And then another question, would you recommend getting like one of those enclosed setups if using the metal halide to control the heat and humidity?
Yes. If you have it in the basement, if you buy one of those tents, you're talking about a grow tent. If you buy a grow tent, that definitely would keep the heat contained in there. Now, you have to be careful because that's some real intense heat. So you can just start off with putting the fluorescents or LEDs in there, and it's going to contain you know, and stop it from being cold. Like if you do have a HP or a metal halide lamp in there, the high intensity discharge lamp, you're going to have a good air circulation. So you're going to have extra fans, and maybe even air. Actually, you're going to have an AC unit in there to control that heat. Like these lamps give off an intense amount of heat. So having them enclosed in a small spot, you're going to need extra stuff.
Sorry, I clicked ahead accidentally. And then another question, do you take into consideration that the homes have basement furnaces? Should we try to grow the plants near the furnace, and how do we balance the heat with the heat from the grow lights?
You you could grow and put your operation near the furnace. That would help. Or if you have an vent in your basement that's blowing the heat around that area. I know I do. I have a vent that blows out a lot of heat. So having it close to that too. But the basement is cool. So if you can enclose it, that'd be great. But having it near the furnace, yeah, that'd be ideal to have it near your furnace. Yeah, I would do that if you can.
Okay, word. Okay, so we're ready to, that's good for questions for now. You ready for the next one?
Yeah. Okay, so we're at the high pressure sodium. So again, I didn't state before, but Keto brung it up. These units, they could cost around the same range as the metal halide. And if, of course, you can buy more expensive units, but to start off, you wouldn't need to spend no more than $200. And that's what I bought with mine. I got the same unit right here. It's probably cost me like $179, maybe 200 with taxes. But it comes with the ballast and lights. I don't think it comes with a timer. But yeah, so the HPH grow lights are one half of the standard high intensity discharge grow systems. That's the other half is the metal halide, producing a red spectrum. So this spectrum is great for your flower and your fruiting stages. They're used to replace the metal halide bulbs once your plants have entered the flowering stages. The pros about these are they're very effective in like their potential for light output. That's why I had the plant so far away from, the light. That was able and intense to keep it warm enough and to keep them growing without stretching too far. So like once you get into using high intensity discharge lamps, you'll see that it's beneficial as in having enough heat, having enough power to grow your plants in a large amount of space. But then, it creates, a lot of heat to where it can be a problem if you have it enclosed to where you're going to need extra equipment to cool it off. So, you do have your pros and cons, but once you scale up your growth, these are great to kind of curb that cold problem, stretching problem. You don't have to have a whole bunch of lights. You just have one of these, and you can see in my pictures, you can see how much ground it covered, and it kept it good for a while. So yeah, these are great though for the bigger stages of your plant's growth. And I wouldn't put these over the metal halide, because if you have a greenhouse or something, you can kind of take those outside and put them in the greenhouse, and you won't have to really grow them into the fruit and flower stages in the house. But these give off an intense amount of heat, and it's good if you're trying to start early in the wintertime like we're doing now, and the basements are cold. So again, this just gives off a different spectrum, and it's great for that later stage in your plant's growth.
A few comments and questions. So I think it's worth Daryl Smith stated that the metal halides, you will see a major difference in your electric bill.
Mm-hmm.
So Daryl was commenting that there's a big draw on power from those.
Yeah, and both the HP too, the HPS, they both draw out a lot of power. you know. So, you know, you got to deal with that. That's the cons about it. It does draw out a lot, you know. So you definitely want to have those on timers and run those, you know, at the minimum amount of time you can have, you know, your lights on, or you want to have your plants under the lights, because they do, and that's the main kind for them. They really do. The high intensity discharge, the metal highlight or the HPS, they really do kick out a lot of energy, and it will bump your bill up. It will.
Yeah. So let's see. I live in an apartment, a small apartment, and I'm looking to try and grow my transplants indoors to ultimately be placed in a hoop house. How should I proceed?
So you live in an apartment. Do you have a closet you can grow in? That would be ideal if you could grow in a closet, a small closet. Even having shelves, or even make some shelves or get a shelf and put it in the closet so you can have it, you know, racked up and grow different tiers of the shelf. That'll save you a lot of space. And then using fluorescent or LED lights, it won't kick up a lot of heat. And that'd be ideal for, you know, starting with those lights. If you can start in the closet, if not, you can start them, you know, outside, that just have enough space to hang your lights up, you know, keep them above the plants. But yeah, if you live in an apartment, I would try to start in the closet if you can, or get you a shelf, one of those metal shelves, one of those plastic shelves from Home Depot, and you know, put your lights underneath on each level of the shelf. And you can grow like that to where you can maximize your space, your vertical space, and don't have to have them all laid out in the basement like I do.
Okay, and then maybe we'll just hold this for later. I'll just bring this up later, talking about temperature. And I think there's a lot of interest in talking about heat management. So maybe we could, once we get through onto the other stuff, maybe you could just go into detail on that.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, next slide.
Okay, so now we're on to the soil, the types, the brand, amendments, and additives. Like the Pro Mix, this is a great soil. It comes with a lot of extra stuff. It's all organic. It's a great start for your plants, your plantlings, and your seedlings. This is what I use. The price range is, if you go to like your home, not your mom and pop, but like a hydro store, a hydroponic store, one of them grow stores, you might be able to get a discount on them. I know they do have deals sometimes with the Pro Mix, but now stuff has been getting inflated, so the price might have changed. But I just recently checked it out. It's about $35 to $55, but it has a lot of stuff in there. It's a soilless mix. It's great for starting plants. Like, this is great. This is what I use. You have other ones available, but this is your bang for your buck. Like, it has a lot of stuff in there. So it is a little pricey, you know, for buying a bag of soil, and it is a little heavy. But it's worth it because it has a lot of stuff in that soilless mix that helps your plant get through them first stages of growth. That's essential for your plant to be healthy and vigorous, you know, throughout its whole life.
How far would this bale or bag or whatever you want to call it, how many trays could you fill with this?
How many trays can I fill with it? Quite a few. Quite a few trays. Like, it's worth it. Like, if you
goes a long way.
It goes a long way. And it's compacted too. So it doesn't look like a lot when you get it. It's heavy though. You can tell by the weight of it. It really has like 40 pounds. So you have to, yeah, or 60 pounds. You can get 40 or 60 pound bales. That's why the price is probably different from jumping so high. But you can get 40 and 60 pound bales. and it come, compacted. But when you start breaking into it, it's a lot in there. So it does go a long way. Is very good for the price. Instead of buying a whole bunch of bags of soilless mix, these bales are a good way to go, and they last for a long time.
2 questions about the soil mix. Does the Pro Mix last? Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, is this specifically for seedlings or for any indoor growing?
No, you can use it for indoor growing. I mean, like, what do you mean by that? Like, specifically for seedlings or indoor? Like, this is an all round mix that you can start off with. So it's great for seedlings. It's great for seedlings because it doesn't have a whole bunch of stuff in it, but it has enough to get your seed through its vegetative, this first couple weeks at least. But what I add in my mix, I add my own little additive too. It would be some compost. So that even pushes it, because what happens here is you have your plants in the basin for a while, or where you're set up in the area for a while before you actually put them into the ground. So if you want to kind of just give it that enough food, you can say, to get it through those stages before you start feeding them and top feeding them with stuff, this is great with a little bit of compost mixed in your mix, and it'll go a long way. But like, you have different mixes too that have different stuff in it. So it's almost like you kind of will see which one you like the most, or which one you can grow with or grow the best with. But basic soilless mix like this Pro Mix or the Sunshine Mix is a great way to go and start, because it's filled with so much stuff that, like, it'll keep your plant alive without you adding nothing to it. But water, you have to water it, of course.
Let's see. How long does it last?
The Pro Mix?
Yeah.
Well, since it's a soilless mix, it really doesn't like break down like that. So you can reuse it. Like, I reuse mine because I don't add nothing until I transplant them. So you can use it over, like, especially if you add in compost. It's reusable. So, like, it lasts a while. Like, I reuse plenty of my mix, especially if stuff didn't seed right. I'll mix it back in, and it works well though, because it's a soilless mix. So if you do more research on that, it doesn't break down as quick as like an more organic material.
Could you? I think the term soilless mix is a little confusing. Could you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like, what does that mean? Like, isn't it soil?
Well, not necessarily. Like, the definition of soil. I wish I had it in front, but like, it's not the same. Like, a soil is, or like, more broken down organic material. Like, the soil is its own entity. When you have a soilless mix, it composes of stuff that's going to hold your plant together, so you can put additives and nutrients into. Of course, it does have stuff in it, but it's different than soil. Soil is a mixture of different elements, like, that's broken down completely. So like, with the peat, humus, and perlite, that's natural stuff, but it's not soil. You know what I'm saying?
Word.
It's different than the stuff that's outside you can dig up from the ground. That's broken down with so much organic material. Like, this is still in, a stage where it's not breaking down like that, or broken down completely. So just a quick lesson about that. That's the difference between it. Soil has a lot more broken down organic material and nutrients in it, composed to your soilless mix. It's just components holding the plant together, and you can add stuff into it. That's why they got that mycorrhiza. That's additives to it, in some other form of organic fertilizer, but that doesn't make soil. So
Okay. So like we can't use, just to clarify, it's not a good idea to use soil from the garden for the indoor growing, right?
Absolutely not. I wouldn't recommend it. Just because there's so many unknowns in soil. With this, you kind of know what's in there and how you can kind of fix anything with the soil. You can have parasites, you can have, the pH could be off, and that affects the plant, especially at an early stage. So you want something where you kind of know that this is made specifically for, starting your plants off, opposed to soil. You don't know exactly what's in it. It could be parasites, it could be just other material in there that can throw off your plant's growth at an early stage. You don't want it burning. You don't want to have too much fertilizer in there. So having a good soilless mix will really ensure your plant is starting off at a good start at an early stage, opposed to just grabbing some soil and not knowing what the heck is going to happen. Okay, now you want.
Wait, I'm sorry. This is finicky how it clicks through the slides. Come on. Okay, you ready to go on the next one? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So sunshine mix is another mix that you can use. I've used this before. The ingredients is similar to the Pro Mix, but it's excellent, like it says, for nursery stock, perennials, cuttings, propagation, and hanging baskets. So this is another great soilless mix to use to start your plants off with. Like I said, I've used this before. It holds the water good. It has the right stuff in there just to keep your plant healthy at least for those few couple weeks during the vegetative stage. So you can pick from this one or the Pro Mix, and they probably have another mix similar to this. But I would definitely stick with these two if you can, and they will give you great results. And then they have like different types of these mixes too, so you can get specific with other nutrients and additives if you look on their website, or if you look more into the Pro Mix. But the typical Pro Mix you're going to see is the Pro Mix with that mycorrhiza and the Sunshine Mix #4. Those are like the real popular ones that you will see if you go to a grocery store. I don't think you'll find these in Home Depot or Lowe's, but if you go to your local grow shop, they definitely will have a Pro Mix version and a Sunshine Mix version that range from them prices from $40 to $55, $60.
Okay. I just want to highlight there was some commentary in the chat about so Ruth made a comment on getting away from buying anything with peat moss in it because it destroys the peat bogs. And she was just asking, has anybody found any or made any good mixes with peat? And Molly suggested sifted compost or coconut coir or rice hulls. Do you have any other recommendations aside of mixes that have other things, other than peat moss in them because of the implications of that?
Yeah, I mean, I you don't have to have peat moss in there, but it or she said perlite, right? Is it perlite? Or did she? I'm sorry.
She said, I'm sorry, I kind of went through it fast. Molly suggested sifted compost, coconut coir, or rice hulls.
To substitute for perlite is what you're saying.
Instead of peat moss.
I didn't know it was a problem with peat moss. I'm sorry, I didn't know peat moss was an issue. Like the stuff that I get, like I would suggest if you can do like the cocoa core or whatever, using the cocoa husk. I think that's another soilless material you can use. So they have like stuff with, like, you can buy them cocoa blocks. I know that for sure. You can buy them cocoa blocks.
Yeah. Have you used that stuff?
I have, man, but like What I noticed keto, it don't drain as well, man. Or like I have problems. I do have like it'd be like algae problems, man. If I don't have enough drainage with that stuff. So
Okay.
like if you can find your own way to mix it up, the right mixture, and like she was saying, if you can use some other stuff to substitute for that, yeah. But I noticed if I just use the cocoa, I've tried it just using cocoa, I was getting a lot of algae problems. It was just the drainage. So I like to use this mix because it's an organic mix, and it works. It works for me. So I don't have to buy
Yeah.
all the extra additives to try to mimic it. But I didn't know it was a problem with peat moss. I would look into that though. I didn't know.
There's a question. Do you like how do you add water to the compressed bale? Like how do you?
Yeah. So
How
I
do you
mean, you do, of course. Like once you mix your trays in, or if you mix it in the bin. So I got a slide where it's a bin, and I kind of explain.
okay, so we're gonna talk about that a little later.
Yeah. Well, I think it might be the next slide. Okay. No. So this is the compost. So this is the additives I use with my soilless mix, just because I know they're going to be down in the basement or in the greenhouse for a longer time than usual. So I would add a couple cups to my bin that I'm mixing the soilless mix in, or that I mix it in and put water. So I do add water because it is dry. You want to have it to a consistency to where it's just dripping a little bit. But yeah, of course you would add water. So I would mix these two, a couple cups of the compost, cured compost, aged compost, wherever you can get that from. You can buy little bags of that from Lowe's and Home Depot, or you can get this black gold earthworm castings, which is great. But I would mix a couple cups. I would fill like half the bin up. I'll mix a couple cups of the compost with the soilless mix at halfway filled in the bin. And then I'll add my water, and then I would mix up and do put them in the trays. But like this is what I would do because they are in those trays for such a long time. And if you don't have like a method of feeding them by mixing up some organic fertilizer, I would suggest putting this in your mix when you start your seeds. It doesn't have to be a lot. I just put a little bit.
How much water do you add?
Oh, well, you want to get the consistency of the material to where it's just dripping a little bit. Not a lot, not saturated. When you pick up a handful of dirt or a handful of your soilless mix, you want to have just a little drip. That's how much water I know. So I would start off with, let's say, a half a 2 liter or a liter. Let's just say a liter, so half a 2 liter. I would start out with a liter of water in there. And if you have to add a little more of the soilless mix to offset the saturation, you know what I'm saying? But I would start off with that. And you want it to have just a little drip. You don't want it to be completely dry because you don't want your seedlings drying out, a couple days after you done transplant them or put them into the trays. Like you want to give it enough time to kind of soak, break down, and then, break out of that seed shell. So a little bit of water, in that bin. So the bin I would fill up halfway with the soilless mix. I put a couple cups of compost in there, worm castings. I'll put like a liter of water in there, mix that up, whoop, and then do the grab test, squeeze it, see if it drips. If it's dripping too much, throw a little bit more soilless mix in there and mix it around to where you only got a little drip, and that's enough for that. Enough water for that bed.
Let's see. Okay, we're doing good. Good on questions, I think, so far. Moving on.
Okay, so we're moving on to some of the essential items you're going to need. You're definitely going to need a a water sprayer. And depending on what stage you're at, I would recommend getting the hand pump sprayer, right? But the little dollar sprayer, I would grab that too. So I would get both, either this hand one or the one with the nozzle, the long nozzle hose, either or, but definitely the regular water bottle sprayer and a hand pump sprayer. And like, you want to be able to mist your domes and stuff. So you're not probably going to use the hand pump for that all the time. And then sometimes your plants just need a little mist and not such a saturation with the pumps, the hand pump. So I would have both of them, at least one of the pump sprayers. But these are very essential for like starting seedlings, because man, you got to get down there and spray them real quick. A few minutes, it seems like, man, like you just made it. Like, these are very essential. And then you don't want too much pressure on the plants. So the pump spray down just enough to not damage your plants, rather than using like a water hose or something. So having these little water sprayers are great. I use both. I use a water hose and these sprayers, but having these are essential. Just imagine all these plants down there with this little sprayer. That got crazy real quick. So I had to attach, for a bigger operation, I had to use a water hose to spray all them plants. But these starting off, you definitely need both the small one and one of the bigger ones.
So this is like for the beginning stages?
Yeah. So like, this is some of the equipment that you need. Like, I would definitely, because like once you got them domes set on there, and it sucks having to spray, but just a few trays setting up, you can, you spray your plants and spray the dome. You could do the water pump, so it's like the more plants you get, you'll graduate to a bigger sprayer. Using a hand pump at first is essential and it works. But you don't want to be spraying that when you got 10 trays. You know what I'm saying? So, and then even in your humidity domes, when you have to add some humidity to the tray, spray the domes a little bit, I would use the hand sprayer to spray that, opposed to trying to pump up the sprayer just to spray the dome real quick. You know what I'm saying? So you'll have different tools out of these sprayers to use for the humidity domes and to do a broad spray over an area when you have a whole bunch of plants set up. So.
Word.
Okay, fans, timers, shelves, and surge protectors. I would recommend all these. Starting off, yes, having a fan for air circulation, especially when you need that fresh intake of air. It helps with the plant's strength. It helps with just moving air around and heat around the plant's leaves and stuff. So that's essential. You don't have to have a big fan like this. This is more of the wall fans. They cost about $50. I'm sorry I didn't put the price on there, but I did add a link to these ones though, for sure. I added a link to these. So, and I can tell you the price range though. These fans cost about $50, but they are really good and they last a long time. You're definitely going to need some timers for your energy consumption. If you're trying to save on that, you don't want it running 24 hours. If you can cut it and only need 18. You know what I'm saying? So I would definitely get a timer. The shelves, if you're trying to utilize your vertical space, if you don't have a lot of space, that you can use on the ground and set up like a full basement like mine, you can definitely get away with growing a whole bunch of plants under these shelves. Depending on what size shelf you use, it's going to limit your spacing on putting a whole bunch of trays, however way you can do it. I got slick. I had boards going across to where I had a couple extra trays on the end. I got to that point to where, it's great. So if you need to use vertical space or you have vertical space, having a shelf is essential to scaling up in your operation. And then surge protectors. You are dealing with, you know, a lot of electricity. You are dealing with water. You want to have something that can stop your house from going out or tripping the breaker, if you can. And these are fairly cheap, $7 to $15. You can go to the dollar store really and get them for a couple dollars if you want to get a low end one. But I would recommend taking the link or going to Lowe's or Home Depot and just getting you a nice surge protector. That'll work perfect. But yeah, these are some of the essential items that you're going to need if you want to, you know, be effective and efficient in starting up your plants.
There is a few questions here. Kind of back to watering for a second. Do you water with the sprayer, or are you just misting for humidity?
It kind of depends. Like, so with the pump sprayer, that's more of I'm misting, I'm broad, like I'm gonna do a broad spray. So yeah, I would soak them down with the pump. For the misting, like if I'm doing the domes or just a quick mist, I use the hand pump. And that's why I was saying, like, it's good to have both of them, because I'm telling you, when you got a few domes set up, you have a few plants set up, you ain't gonna want to pump it and spray the dome and pump it. Like, you'd rather just be under a quick spray, mist, move on to the next one, you know, opposed to a lot of plants being on the ground or on the shelves where you can kind of just spray them all. You know, you pump it quite a few times, you can get a good broad, good soaking with that hand pump. So they do have, you know, their uses for the, you know, part of the operation. But I do use the hand pump to soak stuff down and spray it down. If I want to do a mist, I would just use a little bottle pump.
Cool. All right. Moving on.
Okay, so these are some more items that you will need in your operation. So we have our grow trays. The grow trays can vary in strengths, but they're fairly cheap. Excuse me. If you get them in bulk, you can get them even cheaper, like on Amazon or somewhere. But excuse me. They're fairly cheap, $1 to $3. Even with the sale trays, depending on what you're growing, you will get the ones with the different holes, the different size holes. So, and then the humidity domes, they're fairly cheap too, but they are essential for capturing that humidity, keeping them plants wet during them first couple days, keeping it, you know, moist in there and containing that heat. You have your 4-inch domes, and you have like your 8-inch domes. So if you're growing bigger plants that grow a little faster, you would want to use an 8-inch dome. Like I would use the 8-inch domes for my tomatoes, for my cuttings. If I took some cuttings off of something where you don't have a lot of space under them smaller 4-inch domes, you would buy this 8-inch dome. So that's pretty much the difference between these two, the prices too. But the use for these would vary in what type of plant you're growing and how fast it's growing. If you're doing cutlings and stuff, you want to use the bigger dome. Heat mats, those are essential too for those hot crops, those crops that require, you know, the extra heat to germinate. Yes, and it doesn't need days under the heat mat. As soon as it can crack that seed, you give it the right amount of heat, I'll move it off the heat mat and throw another batch of plants there that needs heat. So you can quickly use, or you can use a lot of trays underneath one heat mat, depending on, you know, what you're growing and how fast you want to grow it. But they are very essential for starting off plants that require a little bit of heat for germination. And you'll come to find out you'll get more of a success rate with germination if you do use heat for those specific plants that require that.
Okay. Ready for the next one?
Yeah, we're going to the next one. Okay, so I want to kind of emphasize a little bit more on the trays that you can use. Depending on the size of seeds and how quickly the plant grows, should determine the size and cell trays you want to use. From my experience, like for a smaller plant, smaller seeds, I can use the cell tray with a ton of holes, 200 holes, 105 holes, 128 holes. If I'm trying to grow something like sunflowers, bigger plants, fruit like watermelon and stuff, I will put them in the bigger holes of the cell trays. So I will grow those in something like the 21 holes, the 32 holes, and maybe even go to 50. But if I'm growing smaller plants, I can fit a lot into the tray that have more holes in them. And if I'm growing big plants like sunflowers, watermelons, or plants that just take up a lot of space in these cell trays, and the seeds are just a little bit bigger or a lot bigger than it's your typical seed, vegetable seed. So I would use those to grow in the bigger set tray that have the bigger holes in them. So I don't know if that made any sense, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm trying to explain why those different cell trays would be needed. And I'm not even. No, you good, Keto.
Quick question. I had to step out for a second. Sorry about that.
No, you good.
The question is, what trays would you use for starting tomatoes?
So the trays I would use for starting tomatoes, honestly, if I just had the bigger cell trays, you could use any one, right? I would think though, like you want to start quite a few in the cell tray. So what happens is you would thin these out. So the process of starting my seeds, like in these cell trays, I would start. So let's just say, for instance, the 21 hole. Say I wanted to grow kale in these cell trays, right? I will put maybe 10 to 15 seeds in one cell tray. This is the 21 hole cell tray, right? I will put 10 to 15 seeds in each cell tray, and knowing that I'm going to thin these out in a week. So depending on, I guess, what you have, also the size of the seed. So if you want to grow tomatoes, if you want to just grow them directly and not have to transplant them out of the trays, the cell trays, I would start off with something that's going to give enough growth for the roots of the tomatoes, because the tomato roots grow pretty deep and they grow kind of fast. So you want to give it enough space. So I would grow in something like the 50 hole or 32 hole, starting off like that. But like if you just doing it to thin out, you can start with any of these trays and then thin them out and put them into the appropriate size trays you want them to live their life until you transplant them into something bigger or outside. So it kind of depends on exactly what you're growing and what you're trying to do with those plants. If you plan to thin them out, it don't matter. You can start a ton, any one of these, except for like the real smaller ones. I will put like 5 in each of these smaller ones. But opposed to the bigger ones, I'll put a lot more. And then that depends too on the type of plant. But you were asking specifically about tomatoes. I would start those off without thinning them out and transplanting. If you just doing one seed cell, yeah, I would do like the 32 hole or the 50 hole.
And I know there's like a bunch of other like DIY, like, using egg crates and and all that. Like, I mean, do you see anything wrong with that, or it's just, I mean?
I do have one thing I wouldn't suggest. In cell trays form, those jiffy those peat moss jiffy things.
Yeah, the ones that'll decompose or whatever.
Yeah, but they come in like the cell tray form. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like they the decompose. I wouldn't use those ever because I get algae every time and get like molding issues every time I use those. And especially in the early stage, you got to have the plant wet. You got to keep it wet. And that stuff can hold that moisture so well. Just from my experience, if you can, I know you might be conscious, but I'm telling you, you'll have less problems using plastic trays and cell trays than trying to work with them jiffy them jiffy pots. I'm like, I'll find another way to help the earth, but the plastic lasts a long time too. So I mean, it's you got your pros and cons, but man, it has less of a problem when I grow in plastic composed to some material that holds more moisture. You know what I'm saying? And then when it dries out, it sucks the moisture from your soil that's mixed with your soil. So it's a battle with me.
T mentioned maybe a good tip is she always just saves for when she gets plants from the Garden Resource Program. She just saves the plastic and reuses that stuff.
From the Jiffy pots?
No, the ones from the GRP, the Garden Resource Program.
Oh, yeah. Man, I had plastic for years, man. Like as long as you maintain them, if you can keep them out of the elements after the growth season. Like I've kept some of mine for years, bro, inside of my garage after I do my transplanting and stuff. And then I just take them in the garage, man, for years. So depending on how well you keep up with them and how you handle them, they do last for a long time. And I know, like if we can, and they are recyclable too. So if they break, you can't put them in the recycle bin. So that's good too. Yeah, years. Not for years.
All right, clicking on.
So we have some photos here from our friends at Fish Eye Farms. This is their operation. It's a great operation. These people are doing magnificent things. Like you see how just good the stuff growing here. Great hoop house, great just growth and it's like organized. Like it's inspiring, man. I love seeing stuff like this. And they're doing a great job here. Yeah, this is great. But this is Fish Eye Farms, and this is their transplant operation. And next here we have sorry, something's popping up. Next here we have Molly's home transplant operation. Molly's still like the head farmer, right? I'm sorry if I
Well, Mal and Kello. I mean, they're both.
Okay, so
Kello's actually taking more of a lead on farm, like
she's still a farmer, right?
Stuff, but
I didn't get this right.
They're working together, yeah.
Okay, sweet. So this is her operation. This is so cool, y'all. This is a geothermal. Am I correct, Keo? They're using some type of geothermal?
No, actually, yeah. I just, she shared these slides and then we just got the more details this afternoon. So this is actually that wire, have you ever seen that wire that people use to prevent ice dams on their gutters? It's like a heated wire.
No, I haven't heard of it.
So it's just a heated wire that they're running back and forth through the gravel.
Okay, that's cool. See, I thought that looked like some hoses, and we pumping some water through. But it's a wire, and they just heat it up, low heat, right? Low temperature.
Yeah, and it kind of functions. I think it's kind of like the same principle as the heat mats, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is really cool. This is real cool. Like, how's the energy consumption? Like, do they have it plugged into an extension cord to the crib? Like, how's that working?
Molly's in the chat. So, Molly, you hear that question? What's the energy consumption like?
How are you getting power to this?
So she said she's running an extension cord through the house. So she's just running a cord to it. She said, yes, they're low temp.
Okay, cool. And when
Cheyenne, I'm on
that's
mute. Oh,
okay.
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. No, please explain. Please explain.
Yeah, it's a 100-foot cable. It's plugged into a regular extension cord that comes right back into my kitchen. And it has a temperature controller that we bought. Inkbird temperature controller cost me like $20. And it's really, really low. I think, it's on continuously for 2 months. And it cost us probably 10 extra bucks in electricity.
For the 2 months, like $5 a month or $10 a month?
$10 a month. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's nothing. That's awesome. That's way less than hooking up a heater like I was doing, a small space heater and keeping it under the plastic. Like, this is great. This is awesome. Like, I like this. Thank you for sharing this with us.
Angel asked if this is inside a hoop house. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely in a hoop house. So let's see. There was a question up above. About the humidity domes. Are there any disadvantages to the do-it-yourself humidity domes? To like making your own, like, I don't know, like
No, well, it depends. Like, if you just throwing some plant out, so you can keep the humidity in there by just throwing some plastic over the tray starting off. So if I didn't have enough humidity domes, I would just take some plastic bags, some clear plastic bags, wherever you can get them from. If you can get them clear, and just, well, actually, it don't even matter. If you can just get some type of plastic to cover it, you can capture the humidity like that. But the domes are very essential for maintaining that, and they fit right on the trays, so you don't have no wind getting in there and kind of throwing off the humidity you're trying to build up. They are great if you can buy them, but if you cheap like me, I bought a whole bunch of bags, and I bought, the humidity domes as I went along. When I got more money, I bought more domes. But I did start off with bags. That's a great question, because I did start off with plastic bags at first. When you have 20 trays down there, yeah, humidity domes are kind of pricey when you have that many and that big of an operation.
There's a question about soil blockers. Do you have experience with soil blockers, soil block makers?
No, I mean, I've heard of them before. I remember Elliot Coleman was
Right.
talking about those like a while ago. So yeah, people still use them, right? People still do it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Hey, if I had a soil blocker, I would use it. I would, honestly.
I think generally speaking, what I know about them is the advantage of them is that they allow more area in the soil, like so like that block wherever the plant is growing. If it's the cell and the cell packs like you were showing earlier, that's like all the area that the plant has to occupy with roots. And so the blocks tend to be bigger, and they air prune along the edges. So
Yes.
you tend to have more robust plants with them, is my understanding. But they're kind of finicky. What's that?
Does it like help with creating like a bigger root mass or something?
Right. And so like, I know Earthworks was using them for a while.
Yeah.
And their plants, the soil block plants, seem to be a lot more robust. They're just a little more, like we even talked about doing that for GRP at some point, but it was just like they're too, the soil block can fall apart quite easily. It's just if you're handling stuff a lot, they're not really built.
They don't hold up. They don't hold that structure for too long.
Right. Right. And so, often when you see like the root boundness on when you like leave a transplant in a cell for too long, their soil blocks are supposed to be better for not, that not happening. Let's see, what other questions we got here? So, there's Tracy has a question about heating the hoop house. I think so she's saying, how do I heat a hoop house that is not near a power source? My community garden is 2 blocks away from my home. So I think the intention is like of this is that you would be growing these indoors. That's the kind of the whole idea is like starting the plants indoors for ultimately taking over to your farm.
Yeah, that's a whole nother operation.
Right. Heating, yeah, is not like, I think the intention of even like Molly's hoop house, like that we're looking at here in these slides, like this is not a heated hoop house that you grow your tomatoes in.
Yeah. But it's not heating entirely. She's only heating that one area, right? Like that's where she had the heat.
Right. She's just using this for like when she graduates her plants to out in the greenhouse, basically. Yeah. After the cold weather passes enough for her to do that.
Yeah, this is great. So this is outside and it is just containing its own heat, but not heating up the whole greenhouse.
Right. It's just, this is only soil. It's just heating that table, just for whatever is sitting on top of that bench that's the only thing that's getting any kind of warmth.
Okay. That's great.
Okay. Let's click on.
Oh, and then I was sent some information on how she created this beautiful growing table.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you good. Yeah, so if you guys want to look over that, this is what she spent. Like, I'm gonna be looking into it too. So like, this is dope because I run extension cords up to my greenhouse too, and I run a space heater now, and I just have the plastic, the space heater kind of like blowing underneath the plastic, and it'd be so cold out there. But I don't do it like around this time. It's too cold. When it just warms up a little bit more, I would start doing stuff outside, which I can maintain that heat a little better. But doing this is great though. I'm gonna look into this immediately.
Nice. I'm just gonna, this is just like materials and stuff. People can reference this later.
Yeah, and this is some more reference material. So like when it starts a season door, this is just a general guideline for y'all. If you have some of these plants available and you're thinking about it, you can come back to this and be like, oh yeah, we have that and that. You can find this anywhere, but just for this lesson and just for reference sake, this is some of the stuff you can start. And this is how I start my stuff. Then when to plant them outdoors. There's some more just reference material.
Okay. So I think that looks like that's the last slide. Is that right?
Is it? Oh,
I think so. Which is so. So we have a few more things we wanted to talk about tonight. I know T is here to talk about the kits that we talked about in the class outreach materials. So we can spend a few minutes on that. Before we I do want to maybe put, Will, if people have questions for you, like kind of after the fact,
yeah.
What would be a good way to contact you just to kind of pick your brain?
You can email me.
Okay. It's what is it? William D. Gardner, right?
Yeah, William D. Gardner, the number 2 at gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay. And then we can we'll do we're gonna have T talk a little bit more about the kits, and then we can maybe round it out with kind of open questions if anybody still has things that they're thinking about. So I'll hand it over to T.
Peace, everybody. I am really excited because I'll just say over the when the pandemic first hit, right, we was in that greenhouse like crazy people trying to produce all the transplants without the volunteer support. And it really made me think about kind of the vulnerabilities in our system. If you remember back, the greenhouses, there was problems accessing the greenhouses. They were all short staffed. We ourselves were having problems keeping up with the anticipated demand for transplants. And basically, I wanted to figure out a way to support people in their indoor growing efforts, so that whatever happens within our ecosystem, there's more people in the ecosystem that know how to grow transplants, that have the resources to grow transplants. And so last year we gave out 40 kits, I think. This year we have funding for about 30. I'm going to drop an application in here, and really we want to start kind of an indoor growing club is what it is. We want people who are committed to trying this. If you're a first time trying grow lights, we want people to try to commit to coming to the second class, which is going to be taught by She Grows. Candy is on the line right now. She's going to go more in depth about the actual transplant production side of things next month. So we'd invite you out to that. We're also going to have a couple days at the farm where you can come during the height of our transplant production to see the KGD setup and participate in some transplant production with us in March. And so we also want to do our best to maybe send out alerts about different weeks where it's time to see different things. And so we are inviting you to the Indoor Growers Club, folks who are committed to just starting the process of, building our ecosystem a little bit more, to where more folks in the community are knowing how to produce the transplants that we need to keep this gardening movement alive, right? So I'm dropping the application in there. If you want to join us, we are going to be prioritizing for the actual kit giveaway. We're going to prioritize definitely folks who did not get one last year. I do have the list from last year, so I'll just cross-reference that. We'll be just kind of going through the list. So like I said, we have 30. We won't be able to get everybody who's on this call. Definitely prioritizing people who are already in the Garden Resource Program and things like that. So if you fill out the application, you should be hearing from me within the next couple of days. So if you could fill that out, tonight or maybe tomorrow morning, as soon as possible, I'm going to add those up and try to get those kits out next week. Yeah. So if there's any questions on that, feel free to ask. But if not, and then if you don't want the kit, feel free to fill that out, because I'm going to send out reminders on when to see different crops. Okay.
Sweet.
Okay, thank you, T. So at this point, we're just going to open it up to questions. We have a little time left, so if you want to come off mute and just ask your questions in person, you're welcome to. Or if you prefer to do the chat, that's fine too. But Will's a great resource, so if feel free to pose your questions, pick his brain.
Ask me anything, and I will try to answer.
Hi, this is LaVon. I think this was a great section for people that's selling and a large group. But what about the small gardens? This doesn't seem like anything that the small gardeners can do.
Why not? Definitely want everybody growing indoors. Starting their own transplants. I do. I mean, I'm growing in my backyard, and I starting my own transplants. So
I think, well, Will, do you want to answer that?
Yeah. Well, it depends on, like, you're looking at the scope of what the end result was, and like with the kits, it's a great start. Like this is just when you scale up your operation, you know, but these kits that they provided is great for your small backyard, a small little corner in the backyard. Like you don't have to start a ton of plants, you know, but just have the right tools, you know, with your lighting and your little sprayers and the humidity domes, and when you scale up, have a shelf available to grow more. But these plants or these lights right here with the basic items, you don't have to buy a big bale of dirt, but it probably will last you for years if you don't grow a lot. You know what I'm saying? And it's soilless, so it's not going to break down like that, especially if you're not using it. So depending on how much you want to do, but yeah, this is like, don't look at it like what you're seeing as the end results. Like we all started off small, and with these lights, they're just 2 feet. You can put this on top of, depending on where, you know, you got space at, you can put it on top of the fridge or something that creates heat. So that's another way to create heat without using the heat mat. But anyway, yeah, this is for small space starting up. And then you can come back to this and look at a way to scale up any extra tools and material you might need. But, oh yeah, okay, I can use that now. I've got half my basement with plants now. You know what I'm saying? That's how they were doing it. But if you just want to start off with just one shelf, a couple crates, yeah, this is a great way to start. So don't get overwhelmed. Just look at, you know, just the basic stuff, and you can have great success with just starting off with the basics.
Okay, but we need some type of heating system if you're saying to start indoor plants.
Well, no, not necessarily. Depending on like if you're in the basement, that would be
Which is
great.
cold now.
Yeah, which is freezing now, you know, but if you can have it like we was talking about, close to the furnace over there, off the ground, you don't want it on that cold ground. You know what I'm saying? That's going to create more, it's going to be cool for the you know, the soil. That's not going to keep it warm. So if you can have it elevated, so it's things you can do, have it elevated, have a humidity dome, have it close to the furnace or whatever, you know, close to a heat source, have it close to the vent that's in the basement. And if you can really get slick with it, you can cover off or section off an area using plastic that contain that heat coming through that vent in the corner of the basement. So it's ways you can do it. You can start them off on your refrigerator. That creates heat. The top of your refrigerator creates enough heat to germinate some of these plants that require heat. So you can do that as well, just to start them off and then stick them in the basement once they sprout. And then you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So last year I wasn't able to put my garden in, and I took all of my seeds and I just put them in the freezer. And like, did I ruin my seeds? And to use them this year, do I have to do anything to wake them back up? I did put them in jars, and I put like little silica gel packs in the jars with them so that they wouldn't get too humid. But I froze all of them.
Yeah, I know certain seeds take you got to stratify them or something, where you have to mimic the cold weather before you seed them. But I don't know about keeping them in the freezer for, you said months?
Yeah, since like last year. Like, and then I moved houses, so they were like in a cooler for a while and then back in a freezer.
Yeah, I mean, you can try them out, but you say they all like frozen. They have frost around them. The seeds?
No, I took all of the seed packs that I have, and I put those all in like big wide mouth canning jars and like screwed the lids on. So they're inside the jar in the freezer.
Hey, I would try it out. Yeah, I would definitely, you know, see if they don't, like if they didn't get no moisture in it, you know, like something that would deteriorate the seeds. But yeah, if they still whole, and if when you take them out of the seed, out of the jar, and they still shaking and moving around, yeah, I would try. You know, a few of them, like Molly said, try 10, do the, you know, 10 germination, 100 seed germination test, and you'll get your vitality rate off of that, and seeing how vital these seeds are, how still, you know, how good they'll do after that extended frost season. That's a long time to be in the cold. But
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question. What does the kits consist of? Wellness rituals from a Mexican traditional meal.
Oh, I said, what does the kits consist of? What's in them?
You want to show them, T? Or do you want me to
Yeah, can you show what you have there? It's 2-foot grow lights. It's a starter kit and a heat pad that we talked about, and a timer. So there are a few other things you will probably need to get, that water bottle that he mentioned, the fan. Yeah.
Yeah, these are LED lights.
Okay.
These are maybe nowadays, I know they're making them cheaper, but these are great substitute for the fluorescent lights. I think you can even have these even like on the plant. Like the fluorescent lights, you couldn't have the bulb on the plant. Right. I think, yeah, these can actually be really, really close to the plant. So these are very good for having them up close. Now, they don't give off the lumens or the intensity like those bigger lights, but the closer you have these lights to them, they work great for starting off. And they even have like these little reflectors here that you would do to extend where the direction of the light. So yeah, this is a great little kit to start off with. Like you would put these several trays underneath one of these or two of the lights that you get. And that's sufficient enough to start your plants off.
Okay. Because I have a family home licensed home daycare, and I want to, it's something I did it once before with the children coming up in the spring. And I ordered two, I want to say above ground stands. I think I've got two of those. I think they ran me about 300. I've got two of those, and I have the big 4x4 that I had built out there for them as well. So I was thinking about, generally I try to do something with them like in the spring or go out and get started with them. But I wanted to do something to show them something inside this time. I wanted to try to start something inside. And just like Mother's Day is coming up, I wanted them to start some type of plant inside, some type of a garden, something small they would take home and their parent could transplant over for them. And it's something that they actually grew. And then when it grows up and I hope we teach them how they grow up, it grows up, and then they can have that fruit or that vegetable. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to look at doing.
Okay. Well, these lights are great because they're not real hot.
Okay.
So it's great to, kind of demonstrate kids. And if they do happen to touch it, it ain't going to burn them. I wouldn't guess them touching it, but if they happen to do, it won't hurt them. But what's great about these lights too is they have this chain system, so you can hook up multiple lights. So if you had just one outlet to plug into, you can plug this into another light and just use that one outlet. You know what I'm saying? So it kind of saves on space too. And then I don't know how many you can link up, but it looks like it's a number of them you can link up. So these are great.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I filled out my application already. I just filled it out and sent it over.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. Thank you so much. This has been a very informational workshop, and I've learned quite a bit dealing with plants. So I will be looking forward to the second workshop. Thank you so much.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey there, Will. I have a question. This is Deetra.
Hey,
so it's kind of specific to my situation. So I moved in because I had a greenhouse that I was originally using outside to propagate my seeds, but because of how furious the wind is, it just kept blowing over. So I decided to bring it inside, and I was doing some research. This class has been so helpful because it gives me an idea of what I'm looking at. But it's in the basement, and it is we have glass block windows. So every other glass block window kind of has like a latch where we can let in active airflow. I'm really just trying to kind of set it up because there aren't that many plugs down there. So it's set up pretty close to the outlet. That just so happens to be directly adjacent to the furnace itself. I'm just wondering, outside of, I do have heating pads, and inside of the greenhouse, it has a couple shelves. Is there anything else, like, I guess I can do to try to make the optimum environment? And with there being only so many shelves, like how quickly do you kind of figure out, okay, these seeds are kind of already set. They already have their first couple sets of true leaves, to where like you can swap them out. Like, how quickly do you do that?
I guess that depends really on the spacing, like because once they get, like you said, the true leaves, I'm throwing them underneath the high intensity discharge, man, because now I know that they develop. I know that they're going to be looking for that light, so I can throw them underneath a bigger light that doesn't have to be as close to them. And then I'll swap out and put some more seeds down that I just started. So like if you're trying to, like, if you don't have the option for the high intensity discharge lamp, like the HP or the MH, because they do kick out a lot of power, and your bill is you're gonna notice the bill. But depending like your area, you can get a lot of plants down in a small area, with those high. So it's like you gotta, it's gonna be something, whether you're just doing a few plants, or if you want to scale up. It's just the reality is like that. It just costs more. Like it hit my pockets, but it was worth it because I grew thousands and thousands of plants, But in the beginning, man, yeah, it's tough to try to operate those, because I was, what, D? Let me tell you, I used to start them right and take them outside. So if it was a nice day outside, I have a whole bunch of plants like I have outside for like the real sun for like maybe 4 hours, if they can take it, and then I'll bring them back in. So I mean, you can do that too if you don't have the light for that. Like once it get a little warmer, you know what I'm saying? Right now, it's real intense, but I have grown. If you're talking about like one of them small little green tents, I think I had them on one of the slides. If it's like a little tent like that, one of those little hobbyist tents, green,
And it's covered too,
garden
so
tents.
it's pretty warm in there. Like that was the thing I was just kind of thinking about. Like it's warm, and it's trying to keep, I feel like getting them started is good, but sometimes what happens is if I leave them to, they start to reaching, and once they get really reachy and they get kind of weak, then when you want to try to move it into something else, you mess with the plant's viability. So I'm not trying to run into that problem again. So
Yeah,
if I can figure out a better system.
Yeah, I'll say if you can get enough lights, if you can put your greenhouse outside when the wind kind of calms down a little bit. And I noticed like I put a small like space heater in there for the plant. Like if you don't need no heat though, I would just get them outside as soon as I can get them out there. Grow with the lights you got and shift them around. Like even if you have to shift them a few times a day, if they're reaching one way or whatever, or if you have enough space outside to where it's like you kind of like got them used to the cooler weather, starting with your cool crops or your cooler crops. Once they kind of establish themselves, you can put them outside for a little bit while it's, nice out. It's just like, I mean, I remember I had tons of plants I was running up and down the stairs. That's why I bought those big lights. I was like, I'm tired of this. I can't be running up and down these stairs all day, every day, trying to take these plants out and bringing in stuff, So you got to do what you got to do. But like methods, you get creative, and I would enclose the area if it's too cold down there. I would enclose the area where, by the furnace as close as you can. I've used plastic sheets to do it. Or if it's too warm, like you said, have that good fresh air coming in from the window to build maybe even a breeze to move some air around in there where you won't require a fan as much, or you just need a little small fan. But like, just depending on what you need, it's ways to get around so many stuff. I started off with just a few lights. And I remember those days when I was moving around 10 trays under 2 lights and flipping them to the different shelves, like when I didn't have a lot, and I knew that all they had to do was just stretch that one way back, and then bam, I was moving them up to where I had the light at. So depending on, what you got, you can make it work. And then if you can take them outside and start just taking them outside during the day and at night, bringing them in. I know it's a lot of work, man, but it's ways to get around, you know, not having the idea set up. You know, it's plenty of ways to get around it.
Thanks, that was so helpful.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
I ain't even looking at the question.
Oh no, we're pretty good on the chat. Okay. Well, if there's not any more questions, I think we'll wrap it up for the evening. Nice job, Will. That was excellent. We really appreciate you taking the time to put this together for us. I think a lot of people clearly expressed they got a lot out of it. So thanks so much.
I appreciate it.
So everybody, stay tuned. Again, reminding y'all that we're going to be having next class with Candy Fentress of She Grows and CWO Farms. She's going to be teaching the class on the kind of, now you got the stuff, what do you do with it? Starting seeds indoors. And that's going to be on February 28th. I will make sure that everybody gets who was in the class today. I have your email, so I will make sure you get the invite for that. So stay tuned. T will be in touch regarding the application for the kits. And if there wasn't a last question, it looks like Hanifa's maybe trying to ask a question. Is that right?
Yeah, I see her.
Yeah, I was. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
I was wondering the bin that he mixes his soil is mixed in. What size bin is that?
Oh, that was like a maybe like a 15-gallon. 10.
Okay.
It was like at least a 15-gallon. Yeah, you can get something like that, a 10, 15-gallon, something enough or something big enough to move that dirt around. And when you put some water in there, you can kind of just mix it up. And, you know, you don't need a real big bin, but I would suggest like a 15-gallon bin. That should be enough to mix up your dirt for your transplants.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. Last call. Any more questions? Okay. Good night, everybody. Stay warm. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Great job, Will.
Thank you.
Good night. Great job.